welcome to the Ultimate Landscape CEO podcast. We have a very special guest today, Jim Paluch. He is probably the most famous, one of the top three or top two most famous consultants from the green industry and of at least of my generation, right? We here at Jeffrey Scott Consulting are leading the next generation, but this is a retired coach and consultant, Jim Paluch. You either know him, you've heard of him, or you haven't heard of him, and you should listen. We're going to cover some interesting topics. You're going to learn about his background, who he worked for, how he started off as a landscape architect that was terrible at designing, but great at selling, and how that career flourished, and then why he decided to get into consulting and development of properties and realized that one of those two was a lot harder than the other, and how he built his business. And he's a very creative guy. I would call him a visionary, and he'll even share with you how he had one great idea and then he went to the next great idea. And as somebody growing up in the green industry, I've been in this industry for decades. I remember all those great ideas, and I was like, wow, I thought they were awesome. And, in his view, he'll say, well, if he had stuck to one or two even and taken them further, how that might have really changed the impact on himself and his own business. And so I think it's good as a visionary to hear someone else talk about that. He has written 4 books, and his latest book that he wrote really towards retirement is it's called the Depressed Motivational Speaker. I think that's the title. He'll show us the book when he comes on, and he opens right up and talks about how he struggled with depression when he was younger and when he worked and even now. And he did a lot of research for this book on what it takes to overcome depression. So not just his own experiences, but he brought some experts in to help him write this book. And I think this is very appropriate because ever since the pandemic, it's become very clear that a lot of your employees, maybe you, are dealing with mental health issues, depression and other mental health related issues. And if they're not dealing with it, their family members are. And this is really a topic of its time, and one that every business owner and leader has to be sensitive to and figure out how they're going to help their flock, all their employees, really steer through this, your employees and even their families. And so I was really happy to have him on and to talk about this book, which we talk about at the end. And at the very end, we talk about recruiting from high schools and a lot of other topics sprinkled throughout. He gives advice on selling techniques kind of sprinkled throughout as well, because that's what he did at his original job. So for those of you that have been in the industry a while, you'll love this. For those of you newer to the industry, pay attention. Really one of the legends and a person that really inspired me early on. And I've taken some of my techniques from him. These things get passed down, if you will. And so let's jump right in. Here we go. Jim, welcome to the show.
I haven't been able to sleep since you asked me to do this. So I've been looking forward to it. Jeff, thanks so much. Just really appreciate it.
Wait, didn't I ask you like a month ago? You haven't slept for a month?
That's why I got bags under my eyes. It's just been really tough. So you have, and I really appreciate it. It's just fun to get to see you and get a chance to talk again.
So you were asking me who the audience is, and there's like 3,000 downloads a month, all the way from New Zealand to, it's mostly the US and Canada, but it's landscape contractors all over the place.
That's awesome. I'm big in New Zealand.
Yeah, you're about to get bigger.
We sold a lot of books about a decade ago, the Leaving a Legacy book. in Australia and New Zealand. Our publisher, I mean, a ridiculous amount of books in Australia and New Zealand. So it's always fun. And I did not too long ago did a group with an Australian group did a podcast, and it took me like a week to lose my Australian accent after that. So that's that, and good for you for having that number of downloads. That's awesome.
You are a true salesperson if you picked up their accent. Hey, so tell the audience 2 minutes, like, who are you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim Paluch was president of JP Horizons for about 32 years, and now retired and living in Western Massachusetts, and love that because we've got grandkids in this area. Before the consulting, I had a real job, and it was as a landscape architect for Yardmaster in Cleveland. And
so Kurt's Yardmaster?
Kurt's Yardmaster, yeah. Kurt, I have taught. If you talk to Kurt, he'll tell you he's taught me everything that I know. But I'm going to tell you the truth. I have taught Kurt everything that he knows now, and we've. It's been a great relationship with Kurt Klusnick. When he's probably still my best friend after 30 years, and we'll get on the phone and we just pick up right where we left off. And I'm grateful for the time at Yardmaster, not only for the great paycheck that came during that time, but also Kurt introduced me to ALCA years ago and associations, and Kurt was just focused and committed to sales training and bringing consultants into Yardmaster. And so he taught, he did teach a lot as a great example. And probably anybody in the industry today that you would ask about Kurt Klusnick would say the same. He's just been a great advocate for the landscape profession, and has kept me inspired about it all these years.
Yeah. So just for there's people that either know you well or they've heard of you, and there's a bunch who are like, who are you? Which, whatever, we're going to speak to to everybody here. But so just before you got into consulting, just give us a little more background on what you did.
Yeah. Had a great success as a landscape architect in the sales side of it. And, as you probably know, it doesn't always come in the same package, being a landscape architect or designer and then being able to sell. And, so I had the privilege of being able to do that, but I tell people that I wasn't really that good of a landscape architect, but I could really sell. And and back to Kurt. Kurt put a good group of people around me to support my efforts. He had people who would sit at the drawing boards and take the designs, but was tremendous at developing relationships back in Cleveland, Ohio, and throughout Ohio, really, and regionally, selling design, build work, and design bid work. And it was back when Cleveland was really there was a lot of apartments and office parks and great developers, and so. It was a good time for me to be, and that was be there. So it was probably, I think, probably 1982 or 3 to 1986 or 7, something like that was when I was at Yardmaster and in Cleveland.
So was that residential or commercial that you were selling?
Started out as residential, and but then. To sell a couple of $1 million a year back then was a good bunch. And
Dang.
even today, it's still a good bunch. And but I was able to connect with a lot of developers and just hit it off with great developers at that time. And maybe I'll hit on how that happens just a little bit. Just it really got out and was part of the associations, building and home, BOMA, BIA, all those great associations. Now, I was scared to death to go to those meetings, kind of out of college and from Little LaGrange, Ohio, where you didn't know that, anything about associations. So I would put on, the best suit jacket that I had and go there and be nervous and stutter and stammer around. And I found out the trick that I really loved going to these things because they would have kind of a nice spread of hors d'oeuvres and such. And I would hang around the shrimp bowl, and because I like to eat the shrimp. And so that's where I started meeting people. So I met a lot of people that would hang around the shrimp bowl too. And then just got really confident in meeting the president of BOMA at that time, taking him to lunch, taking him out, and developing those relationships. And then I think also I just had an enthusiasm for designing. And so here I was as a young landscape architect designer, getting a chance to do some pretty cool office parks and getting a chance to do some great communities and entries and multi-use communities and things. So it was and sales is a transference of enthusiasm. So I think I just had that ability to get people excited and connected to the enthusiasm that I had for their project and for what we could do for them. So I'm grateful for all those developers that put up with me back in those years. But funny thing, when I left the profession and left Yardmaster to start JP Horizons, probably 4 or 5 of those developers and clients became consulting clients for me, and so that was they wanted that enthusiasm in their organizations as well. So that
I only know you as Jim the consultant, and transferal of enthusiasm would be the moniker I would definitely, that was my first impression, and that would be the moniker I'd give you.
Yeah, well, yeah, and people do business with people, and I was just able to connect with the builders and the developers, and then from that was inspired. We did 4 or 5 residential developments on our own. Beth and I, my wife and I, where we would buy the land, put the roads in, and sell lots off to builders and homeowners. So there was always a thought working with the developers that I would always think, well, wait a minute, if they could do this, I could do this. And then I became a developer, and I realized that no, it's not as easy as it looks. It's where my gray hair came from, was the developer, becoming a developer. And but that was a fun phase of life for me. The idea of working through Yardmaster, getting a foundation of meeting some great people and seeing successful people and seeing what success looked like. And then just aspiring to want to accomplish some of those same things.
I was going to ask you where you made more money, consulting or developing, but that might be a loaded question.
It is. It all depends um, it all depends what development you're talking about that we did. Our first one was definitely the first development we did. The road fell apart. There was a lawsuit from an adjoining neighbor, and whatever caused us to do our second development, I have no idea. But we did, and we got better at it and better at it. But it was a fun time. But there came a time where I had to say, which hat am I going to put on here? Because consulting and developing at the same time, and the phone would ring, and you didn't know, am I a developer or am I a consultant here on this next phone call that I'm getting on? So that idea of we can't be everything, so we better focus in on what we want to do and what we want to enjoy and get good at, I guess.
So how many years did you work in the contracting, as a contractor, or whatever, in the profession? Was that just 6 or 7 years before you switched over?
It was. Yeah, it was. So I went to Ohio State. That's where I got my degree from. And we stayed in Columbus for a couple of years working for, really some small companies. I didn't know when I went from Columbus to Yardmaster, it was kind of like going to the coming from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And it was a big shift. But so I was running crews and digging trees in West Virginia and all weekend long, and then running crews through the week and the all night, and if I was designing, I was staying up at night and designing. So you do that. That's what you do for a little small landscape company, and then hope the equipment stays together and the tires don't fall off the trucks and those kind of things back then. But I'm grateful for that time too, because it also taught me running crews, and working with people or leading crews, what to do and what not to do. And man, did I make a lot of mistakes with people back then. I just did, but I guess that's where you learn not to make mistakes.
Columbus is booming now. I bet it's night and day.
Yeah. And it's Columbus's work, Columbus's profession today is just really amazing. Some of the companies, and from the maintenance companies to the snow companies to the design build, and there's some incredible stuff that happens in Columbus, Ohio. It's just really, really neat.
I have a couple peer group members in Columbus, but I'm afraid to mention their names in case they're the ones you worked for.
Good thinking, smart. Yeah. They're probably. I really don't know if any of those companies that I worked for are still around today. But let's not mention names.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're great people in great companies.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago. Anyways, what, 35 years ago?
Yeah, it was 19. I graduated in 82, and so however many years that is, that's when. And I was working through college. Probably 1980 is when I started working with companies. With a little landscape company in Columbus.
So for those that don't know what JP Horizons did, you want to give us a quick synopsis?
I will. So the consultants would come into Yardmaster that Kurt would bring in. Some really good ones. Some of the fly them in from Chicago and different places and do company meetings. And man, I would sit there and just take notes because that was an interesting thing to me. But it was boring as heck. And I thought, so when I was doing this and looking around and thinking, is anybody else really grasping? Are they excited and grasping this? I thought if we could take these basic people and business principles that we were learning, they were good principles, and make them fun and make them put some energy behind them and some creative learning, that could be pretty exciting. And so that is what inspired JP Horizons, is let's go out and help landscape companies. And that's where we started, is with landscape companies. No, really where we started was anybody that would work with us.
Yeah.
What do you work? If you just needed us, yeah, we'll come. Fourth grade classes, whoever it is, we'll talk to anybody and speak to anybody. But I think we brought that little bit of difference, and then I got the chance to speak at, I think my first, back when it was ALCA, it was in Cincinnati, Ohio, at when the ALCA annual meeting was there, and they just caught me on a good day, I just bam, and so we had music going, we had balloons dropping from the ceiling, we made Frank Ross in the next room crazy because we were so loud in our room, and we started getting people seeing that, well, that's fun. Come and do that at my company. And so we started doing the consulting. And when I say we, myself and Beth and an office manager at that time and a couple of other people that helped. And the processes just started. The first thing we did was something called Circle Q. It's back when quality circles were a big buzzword, and quality is free. Is it Phil Crosby that wrote that book? And so we called it, you can't call it quality circles. So we had to turn around and call it Circle Q. And so some good companies started to bring us in, and just all we did was teach people that it's okay to talk to each other. It's okay to stop, have meetings, teach, respect, all of those things that were just almost common sense, but I believe, it's still true today, but not to the extent. Sometimes as owners or managers, we just get so cranked up that we forget that we've got this team behind us that we need to lead. And so we started teaching that and teaching people to believe in themselves. And so we consulted and then really started going into the speaking side of it. And we also started working with, I spent 5 or 6 years working with the Cleveland Clinic and some big title insurance companies and accounting firms, people that wanted to.
Wait, did it work with accounting firms?
Yeah, like KPMG and Ernst & Young and those kind of organizations.
Can you transfer enthusiasm to an accounting firm? I just want to know.
You to the right, you can. Here's what some of those companies were doing is the accounting firms is they would we would put on some team building programs, and they would bring in like their recruits from colleges all around the country. And at the time we were doing something called Saving the Aborigine. And it was about building bridges out of popsicle sticks and glue guns. And there were 14 foot long bridges, and you had to drive a 10-pound truck across. And so we would have about 30 of their potential recruits there going through this 3 or 4 hour process. And there was a lot of interaction and paperwork things. And we just created this hectic thing they had to do to get these 3 or 4 bridges. It was kind of teams competing.
Yeah.
And the recruiters were around the outside, almost like the NFL Combine, I guess is what it would be like. And they would watch this group of people interact, and they would be picking out the ones that they saw were leaders or communicated or knew how to work within a group. And so those are the kind of things that they brought us in to do, which back at the time I thought that's pretty cool what they're doing there,
Yeah.
to do it. So we'd travel around the country for some of those organizations doing those different kinds of events.
So the product that I know you most for is, and I forget the formal name, but the something training challenge.
Yeah, the Working Smarter Training Challenge.
Exactly. So
yeah.
How did you come up with that idea? I thought that was very unique, novel, nice packaging of the whole product.
We it was back when lean manufacturing was such a buzzword at the time. And so I had an interest in that. And fortunately, we connected with Aaron's Gravely, and that's who taught it to me, or I watched. I did a lot of consulting with them and the team building with them, and then came up with the idea of how can we take that Toyota system and bring it down to such a way that it adds fun and enthusiasm and creative learning and leadership development and teaching people how to work smarter. And so I wrote that 52-week training program, and we started kind of a world tour going around getting people excited about it, and different associations, and Aaron's got behind it. And we had 500 or 600 companies going through the Working Smarter Training Challenge at one time.
Yeah.
And what we learned from that is there was a couple of things. Landscape companies love to compete against each other. So they would be in these groups, and it was down to, hey, you got to do this every week. What do you mean you can't do it? Because this company over here in Memphis is doing it, and this one in Boston is doing it. And we set up a scoreboard on a website, and they could see who was keeping up with it. So everybody would do the training. And then they started to catch on to things like 5S'ing and process mapping and those things that just made a difference. So yeah, I'm proud of that program. That was a cool time in our consulting practice, and we made a lot of friends and a lot of people I transformed their business, I think, with the Working Smarter Training Challenge.
Would you say that was the pinnacle of your, I mean, I know that's a sort of a terrible question to ask, but like I kind of look at it as your pinnacle, but I don't really know the inside of what you did.
I would say everybody, maybe many people listening and yourself, Jeff, probably know Michael Hatcher down in Memphis, Tennessee.
Sure.
Michael Hatcher used to say, Jim, you've recreated yourself more times than Madonna, because and he was right. We made it. I think when I look back,
wait, he probably told you that 10 years ago, and she's already reinvented herself 2 more times.
Yeah, looking back today, Jeffrey, if I could think about it, if I would have had, if I was just said, hey, let's do Working Smarter Training Challenge and let's just perfect it and keep growing it in a way that it's more effective and keep people coming back year after year and working at it, I'd probably still be doing Working Smarter today. Had a bad habit of getting Working Smarter Training Challenge going, and then it's probably my ADD, and I would go, hey, you know what we should do? Here's another idea. We should do a sales jam. Hey, that's really cool. So sales jam, Working Smart. We should do leadership jams. Yeah, let's do leadership jams. And so I was really good at creating the next cool thing. And,
Yeah.
and that was fun for me. I think it was the creating side. And we did a lot of great events all over the country, that in leadership jams and sales jams and the owners network, and probably things that I've lost sight of. We went down to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, and did a wonderful program there that was built on teaching us how to tell our story. And that's where there's a great rock and roll recording studio down there that was great at it. Just brought people down there and had a wonderful magical story. And we saw a documentary on it, and I thought, man, that'd be great. Let's take a bunch. So we took 100 people down to Muscle Shoals, and so we're always looking for that next cool thing to do. And
it's interesting. I saw a movie where Muscle Shoals was a big part of it. I'm trying to think what the movie was. Black musician and white. Muscle Shoals, I guess, had white.
It was Rick Hall is the fellow that started the Muscle Shoals sound, and it's where the Swampers, which became part. Well, we don't have to get into a whole musical thing here, but so we got a hold of Rick Hall, who was on the who was in the documentary, and it's a great documentary to watch. Great, and we met him through the Chamber of Commerce. We went down there. My son was working with us at the time. We flew down and met them all and said, "Hey, what if we do this and bring them down?" So we rented out the whole Muscle Shoals theater, had Rick Hall there. We watched the documentary with Rick Hall and 100 other people, and I interviewed him on stage. And it's still probably one of my favorite events that we ever did. And because we were teaching our clients at that time, how do we tell our story? We've got a story to tell. How do we tell it? And that's what Rick Hall did, was he told his story, and it really made a difference for him. So how can we learn to do that?
That was probably before the book Story Brand came out, I'm assuming.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, this was it was. I'm looking across, and we all created time capsules at that event, and it was back in must be back in 2015 that we did that, because we all had a album cover, and we put all of our everybody put their goals in and sealed this album cover, and it was around create a greater future. And so I know I've got another year to go before I can open my time capsule that's sitting over here on the and I have clients that were still there that I'll talk to. They'll say, "Hey, another year to go before we can get that thing open, or another year and a half." And so it's going to be fun to open and see what kind of goals we put in there and see how many of them came.
I have taken a few of your techniques that I now use. My favorite was when I saw you speak and I saw you get up on a chair, and you're a pretty tall guy, and I'm a short guy, and I'm like, I should get up on a chair. I could really use that. And I don't do it all the time, but sometimes I'll get up on a chair when I'm talking, and
all those kind of things. I stole all that stuff from Springsteen. I used to watch and that's where a lot of my presentation style came from. If you go see a Springsteen concert, I mean, he's one of 20,000 people in the room, but he's leading the charge, and you leave there energized. And so that's what I would try to do myself. And if we needed to get up on chairs, or if we needed to howl, or if we needed to do the wave, or whatever it is, it just as long as it has a meaning behind it. If you just have people do things to be goofy, it doesn't work. But if
Yeah.
hey, let's all get up on a chair and let's think about what does it feel like being up here on this chair. And maybe you're standing there thinking that, wow, I've never done this before. This is kind of cool up on this chair. And it was just about getting everybody to think about, step up and look beyond where you're at right now.
And I just did it so I could see the audience.
Yeah, well, you could take it to a whole new level now.
Yeah.
And one of the funnest things that we used to do is have people break boards, and maybe 50 people we would send 50 pine boards someplace and teach them how to break through a board. They'd write their obstacles down on that board, and somebody would hold it for them. Their partner would hold it for them. They'd break through, and then the others. The most we did one time with a company, it was a big accounting firm at the Grand Ole Opry, the basement of the Grand Ole Opry Hotel. We had 1,400 people, 700 people at a time break boards, and then the other 700. And then when it was done, they all started clapping these boards, and that was a pretty cool moment that it happened. But again, I bet out of those 1,400 people, there's a lot of people that remember. They probably don't remember who I was, but they remember remember when we broke through boards? It was all about breaking through obstacles. And
it's probably the most fun those accountants ever had.
Yeah. The toughest group I ever talked to, Jeff, was the Association of Explosive Engineers. And their job was blowing up things, blowing up bridges and taking down buildings and such. One of the toughest groups, and it was on a Sunday morning someplace, and I don't even remember where I did it, but the engineers were tough. The accountants, you get them loosened up a little bit. I've had fun with the accountants.
That's a good point. For the engineers, it's life or death.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, let's switch gears here a bit. So you've written how many books?
4
books.
Yeah.
And so I forget the first one you wrote or the first one I read. I didn't have my library like I have here now, but you wrote one right on the edge of retirement. Do you want to speak about that one?
Yeah, that was so the Depressed Motivational Speaker is the name. I'll just do a plug. Here's the Depressed Motivational Speaker.
Yep.
And so people say, is that a true story? Is it a true story? Because all the books that I write are novels. They have characters. They have you laugh, you cry, but they all have a meaning behind them, kind of like Og Mandino books. That's kind of who inspired my style of writing. Yeah. And so throughout all 30 those years of consulting, I noticed how many people battle to different degrees depression, for lack of a better word to call it, or lack of a term to give to it.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, maybe it's just time to write this book and to write about depression and write about it in a way that people would read it and it would stick with them and they would talk about it, and maybe it would bother them a little bit. So I pulled a lot from my own experiences, because I was a depressed motivational speaker. I mean, I battled depression since I was a kid, and so writing this book, I pulled a lot from my own personal experiences. I pulled a lot from what I would see from other people and what I would talk to. We talked to some great psychologists who wrote books and got their feedback, and just really studied it for a couple of years. And then it took 2 years to write the book. And it is a story that the log line would be some that if you were to describe what it's about a rogue psychologist who challenges a misfit group of suicide survivors to defeat depression by learning to throw tomahawks. So that's what the book is about. And I'm writing in writing it, it allowed me to explore some of the things of why do I get depressed, and why is depression, after a couple of centuries of dealing with mental health stuff, why is depression still there? And so the premise of the book is depression is something that is an enemy that can only defeat us if we give it permission to do so. And so there's some really cool characters. It's an incredible story. There's it's one that you probably don't read just once because there's a lot in between the lines that hit people, but it has really three great concepts that come out of it as a strategy to use in addressing and thinking about depression. Do you want to get into those?
Well, yeah, and I have a question, and maybe you're just about to answer it. And so the question that's like floating in my head is, as a business owner, what should we take from this? And maybe that's what you're about to answer.
No, it's a very good question. And as a business owner reading the book, and that's who has, at least in the first year, a lot of our people that have read the book have been business owners, and it's starting to become a kind of a book that's read by moms and dads and kids, older kids, but what a business owner will get out of it is hopefully to just become aware of, mental health issues are real. It's out there. So, and to realize that when I get down, and whether it's for a day or for months, that I can't just fight my way through it. I can't just be macho and get through it. And because I've sat with a lot of macho people in their beautiful conference rooms and watched and had them break down in sobbing, just the things that they would go through. So as a business owner, what you can get out of it is this strategy to help yourself, to think about yourself, and by all means to start to create some awareness of what's going on in my team that's around me. Because if I'm dealing with it, there's probably somebody else that is either dealing with it themselves, or has a child, or a spouse, or somebody in their family that's dealing with it. And I just, in our research and the things that we did before writing the book, it's just an amazing thing of how real it is in people's lives and prevalent it is.
What if you're an owner and you don't suffer, and what if you have that perfect family? We know it doesn't exist, but what if you feel like, hey, things are all pretty good? What should that leader, how should they start thinking differently about mental health with their team?
Yeah. And that's a great question too. And maybe that's where these strategies come into play. Part of my motivation in writing it was to draw this attention between mental health approaches today that seem to always be looking backwards to try and find the answer to why you're feeling bad today. And what was it that did this to you? Let's go back and talk about it. And I would go to counselors through my life, and I would sit there and we would talk. And I realized after a couple of sessions, I'm doing more I'm doing more consulting with this person, trying to tell them that, hey, here's how maybe we should approach this. But that helped me sharpen it. So one of the strategies behind it, the first one that is just so important is asking ourselves, what's next? Okay, I'm down. Okay, I've been down. Or okay, I've suffered something here that's happened. What's next? What little thing can I do to move from where I am right now to where I need to be? And this is the important part, to move from where I am to where I need to be in order to get to where I want to be down the road. That is a strategy that all of us as business owners or leaders, whether we're battling depression or battling a downturn in the market or can't find people, we should be, instead of throwing our hands up, okay, what's next? What's the simplest thing we can do to move from here to where we need to be in order to get to where we want to be? And there's a wonderful book called One Small Step Can Change Your Life by Dr. Bob Maurer. And he was a big help in helping put together some of the concepts that are in the Depressed Motivational Speaker. And he uses Kaizen, or lean management, or the concept of working smarter. How do we apply that to ourselves? This one small step of just getting better, and making that decision. So a business owner that has a perfect situation, the strategies still work. The strategies work for that salesperson that is maybe in a slump, and you're either going to have to make a change, or he's going to have to make a change the people or change the people.
Yeah.
But learning how to sit them down instead of saying, man, you got to start selling more. You got to sell more. You got to sell more. You got to sell more. To be able to sit down with them and say, what's next? What's the simplest thing we could do to get you back on track? Because, man, I hired you because you're talented. You've sold before. What do we have to do to get back on track? And now we just became a partner to them instead of you better, instead of an adversary. Because if we're in a slump or not performing up to where we should be, it's something that's happening in our head. We're listening to the wrong voices in our head. So that strategy is kind of the foundation of how do I turn the page, get to the next page so that we can start moving forward from here. And then the second strategy that comes into play is practice doing the right things right. Practice doing the right things right. For a person that battles depression, we practice doing the wrong things and get really good at it, really good at thinking the wrong thoughts. Or there's a great book by David Burns called The Feeling Good. And in it, he writes about cognitive distortions. And cognitive distortions are when one little thing happens, everything's terrible. We just blow it out of perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what we learn to do. And we get into in the book a little bit about how the characters learn to do that, even manipulating their parents back when they were kids, getting their way. And that becomes, we'll manipulate people later. And even if manipulating, it means being depressed, and then if we're like this, because you didn't buy me a candy bar when we went through the checkout line, but when I did this and you did, hey, our little mind goes, I've got an idea that works. I'll just be down when I don't get the way, and we perfect it over the years. So it becomes instinctual. So learning to practice doing the right things right. And as a business owner in that's where consultants come in. They allow us to see what's some of the right things here, and they can sit down and you have a little bit of credibility, that even like with that salesperson, it may be you that's going to, Jeff, in your case, talk to that person, and to be able to say, that's not the way to approach it, but let's try it this way. Let's practice it this way. Let's try doing it this way. And I believe, had clients that used to say, and you've probably heard it too, that consultants are cheap money. They're money well spent, because they can come in and be a catalyst to change that people couldn't do themselves. And so, to be able to have somebody come into our lives, or a book come into our life that gets us going, wait a minute, that makes sense. I got to find out what is the thing. And so that's where the throwing tomahawks idea comes into play. And that's what is just over and over and over again, learning to throw a tomahawk, as these misfit group of suicide survivors and depressed people learned. And it just set in their mindset that you've got to do the right things right, whether it's how we're thinking, or how we do our P&L, or how we put our chart of accounts together, or how we sell. We've got to find the right way to do it, and then just keep perfecting that, keep perfecting it. So taking those small steps and practice doing the right things right. Do we have time for one more?
One more. Sure.
All right. This third one, and I think we've been on some podcasts before that. Maybe I've said this in the past, where you and I were guests on podcasts, is focus on what's happening through you and not what is happening to you. Every person I was kind of my own laboratory. So I would look at started thinking about myself and writing the book is, when did I get depressed? Well, it wasn't when I was helping somebody. It may be before I got up on stage that I was depressed, but the moment I got up on stage to speak, I was no longer thinking about poor me for whatever reason. And I was thinking about all these cool people that I get to work with. So I just watched that when people were depressed, their focus was on themselves. This is what's happening to me, or poor me. I watched it in my father. My father taught me really well how to be depressed, and it had a wonderful life, and he did great. But he would get to looking at all the things, something was going wrong, and they were doing this, somebody's doing this to me, and boom, he's depressed. But have him go help somebody move, or help them build a deck, or whatever it was, they're excited. So if that little saying that just focus on what's happening through us and not what's happening to us, that's a battle cry that maybe should be on a 3x5 card up on the wall someplace that you look at, or to ask yourself when you're getting down or off track, am I focusing on what's happening to me or what's happening through me? And if we can be honest with that. And so those three concepts wrapped throughout the book, wrapped throughout a up and down roller coaster of a story that we hope one day will be a movie. But those simple concepts, and to be able to think about them and learn about them in reading the book, and these are playing over and over in your mind, will not only help us with depression or overcoming problems, but I think they can help us with our business, our relationships with people and family. And really what it does come back to, all three of these things, is owning it in ourselves and making a choice. What are we going to do? What are we going to do next?
I think the three strategies really are, anyone could make use of them.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. Coaching a little league baseball team. what's next, guys? Nobody's hitting anything. Maybe we should work on our hitting, or nobody. What's next? What's next is a wonderful question to ask ourselves and our team, and to own it, and then to build on it. Not just to do it one time, but to know that this is the strategy. And if we said, well, what's next is to step back and look at our chart of accounts, or to do more batting practice. Well, we better do that. We can't just come up. We gotta act on it, make that decision.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a bit of motivation to pull yourself out. Listen, I have 3 kids. One has had severe mental health issues and still does. The second, still battling, but not acknowledging. The first one totally acknowledges. And I have a third child who, sometimes I wonder if he is dealing with those issues. So for me, it's very real. And as you're talking, I'm like, how can I get my kids to listen to this podcast? Never going to happen. I don't think, but you never know. Maybe they will.
Here's how we do it. Here's how we do that. And this is my mom taught this to me back when I was 18, and when she bought a How to Win Friends and Influence People book from a rummage sale someplace in LaGrange, Ohio, and she brought it home and she sat it down on the dining room table, and she looked at me and said, "Jim, honey, whatever you do not read this book."
Okay, great.
And so I'm at 18 years old. I'm picking it up thinking, well, there's something about sex in here someplace, and I'm going to find it, And before I knew it, I'd read that whole thing, and it's over here on my bookshelf now, but I've probably read that book or listened to the tapes 30 or 40 times. And it's something about, or hey, listen to this podcast and critique it. Listen to this podcast and tell me, was this guy full of it, or did it make some sense? And
that one might work.
Yeah. It's really it's the same thing that we would want to do with our employees. I would never take a Win Friends and Influence People book and say, "Dude, read this because you need it." That's a terrible thing to say. Read this and let me know what you think.
Yeah. Hey, I have one last question here. So what's next? You've retired from our green industry. I hear you want to be a movie producer. I think you said that somewhere.
Yeah.
What's next for Jim?
I'm really enjoying. We're real close to having the screenplay done on the book, and that has been such a fun journey, and to meet other screenwriters and read and learn about it, and so finishing that up and getting that happening. But retirement is such a blast, and it's such a challenge to say, okay, retirement does not mean, okay, let's stop. It means, how do we just keep growing? And so I'm really enjoying the physical fitness side of it and the eating right side of it, and painting a lot. But I think just keep perfecting the approach. And here's one thing that I thought, I'm going to get really good at retiring before I think about anything else. Just like we were talking about working smarter. I know a lot of my clients all had a pool going of how long Jim would stay retired, and betting on the date that I would be back on the road again. I don't think I will be. I think I just really have made the commitment. I miss it. I miss the interaction with people. But I'm going to get really good at this retirement thing, and I'm doing nonprofit things here in Western Mass with some companies, and helping them mission statement wise and in finding their values. And that's been fun just to do that.
There's a lot of need there.
Yeah, there is.
In the nonprofit world, you don't even have to travel for that.
No, exactly. Yeah, and so you find the people that you want to work with and the causes that you believe in that they're working on, and it's really been fun.
Where do you live in Western Mass?
In Williamsburg, which is just a little ways from Northampton, which is in Amherst. Amherst is where UMass is at, and so that we're 30 minutes from there and about 45 minutes north of Springfield, and so we live up in the on top of a mountain with a beautiful view, and love Western Massachusetts. It's just
I think I held my third peer group ever in Northampton.
Did you really?
I'm pretty sure my second or third ever. It's near what's that all girls school? I think it's near it.
Yeah, Smith College. Smith College.
Is it? Yeah. Beautiful town.
Beautiful town, beautiful country, great people, a lot of farming communities and trails, and hiking, and it's just we were really surprised when we landed here, and it happened to be the grandkids that brought us this way. So
I'm from Connecticut, and my dad would take us to Tanglewood. Is that in Western Mass?
Yeah, it is kind of the southwest corner of Western Mass. We haven't been there yet, but James Taylor hangs out there a lot. He plays there about every a couple of times a year. I think he lives close to there, and Tanglewood's a great spot from what we hear.
Yeah, so there's a lot of creative arts on that side of Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So, okay, one last thought or question. So speaking to the audience here, they own $10 million landscape firms, or $5 million, or $1 million, or $500,000, or $20 million. They may be in an association role, or maybe they're even in another kind of contracting business. So from all your years in the industry, one or two pieces of advice.
Obviously take care of yourself, and don't wait too long to make sure you're doing the physical fitness things and the health pieces, because it ties in so much with success. Exercising our self-discipline muscle will pay off in big ways. If you're part of an association, somewhere along the line, stop going by yourself to the association meetings and take key people to association meetings. And then when you come back from association meetings, don't make it seem like you just learned a bunch of secrets that you're going to keep to yourself, or your group is thinking, oh my gosh, he's at an association meeting. He's going to come back. You know what? He's going to turn us all upside down. So they're already thinking negative thoughts. Just like we were talking here, bring the thoughts back and say, here's the things that we picked up. What do you guys think of it? And Jeff, I know you and so many other great guys, the peer group piece of it. Thank goodness for peer groups. I mean, what a wonderful thing. And it's so, the peer groups that I see, and I know that you do, and Bob Maffei and so many other companies, the Wilsons, all of them, there's this friendship that happens that you don't want to let your friends down, and so you're going to rise and do great at your business. And I have seen so many people. I believe I could say that every one of my clients who grew in success were part of a peer group, whether it was a formal one that was put together or they tried to do it themselves. But why not get together and share ideas and then hold each other brutally accountable to it? We all need that kind of thing. So so that would be a bit of the success, and then just keep finding ways to connect. I believe at the high school level with people that could be the future in our business. That we I don't think we've done that well enough yet.
No.
We've given it way too much lip service, and it's the people. It could be great for peer groups to make that part of what they're doing, is to say, how did you go talk to the high school? How did you go talk to the Hort School there in your community? And we need to be out singing the importance of outdoor living and the landscape profession. Because
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's right. It's a great idea. I definitely have peer group members that are very good at that. And I think they've become, in the last couple of years, it's like, all right, where do we look now? Okay, let's look at high school.
Yeah.
And it's a good idea. I'll make sure it gets shared. We have 140 companies in our peer groups, and
good for you. Yeah.
I will make sure that gets shared across the board.
Yeah. And maybe sometime we can get together and do another little podcast to tell people how to do that, because there is a process to create partnerships that not only get the kids excited, but get parents excited and get the educators. And most of all, we've got to connect with the high school counselors so that they're not thinking, oh, this kid, I know where we should put him. Why don't you go into the landscape, which falls like 2 levels underneath auto body shop, and I don't mean anything about either one of those, but we've got to continue to raise the image and the perception of what our industry is about and how important it is.
I guess it's just like when you recruit from colleges, you got to connect with the influential professors.
Yeah.
So in high school, you're saying we have to mimic that same process.
Yeah. Yeah. And that we'll save that for another podcast sometime, because it's a very exciting thing that we did some good things in different communities about it. And I think if you can get a whole movement, that's where Come Alive Outside was born from, when we created that idea several years, 10, 12, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Was let's place an importance and create this awareness that it is important. What we do is important to get kids off the couch, to get them outside, to get people connected with nature. And Mr. Guidance Counselor, why would you not want to get your students involved in that process and in that profession? Because it can make a difference.
Jim, you have made a big difference. And I'm really glad that we connected. We connected like a month or two ago, and then I'm busy and it's sitting on the side somewhere. And then I spoke to Todd Hardy, and your name came up, and I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm glad that happened.
Well, thank you, Todd, and thank you, Jeff. It's just been great to see you again, and glad to hear of what you're doing with the peer groups and how many people are involved. That's not only is that cool as a business model for you, but it's great for the profession. You need to go out and get about another 145 more real fast, because the more that are doing that and learning from each other, the better it is for everybody.
I just might have to hire you out of retirement. I don't know. Who do I talk to?
No, I think there's a few guys that still have the money pool in there, and I don't want anybody to win on that. So it'd have to.
Oh yeah,
it'd have to be a while. So thank you for the compliment, though.
All right, Jim.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you. Thank you.
You too. Keep doing great things, buddy. Appreciate it.